Hello, my name's Sarah and I work at Aligning Health. One of the main things I do in my job is to teach people about Ayurveda. So I teach people how to be Ayurvedic practitioners, but also teach my clients about what Ayurveda is. And this can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes, particularly being from a rural Victorian environment in Australia. So one of the first things that we need to do is to be able to talk about contextualizing Ayurveda for our Western world. And I need to do that specifically in the area that I am. So I'm delighted to be able to talk to you today about Ayurveda contextualizing for the Western world. As I said, my name is Sarah, and I've been working with Ayurveda for quite a long time now. And I came through to Ayurveda through yoga, and it's completely changed my life. I used to work in hospitality. I've worked as a chef for a long time. I've worked as a counsellor for a long time. I've also worked as a teacher for a long time. And the beauty of Ayurveda is it starts to bring all of this together. And so we work from a holistic perspective for hope and change. So some of the things that I hope to cover on today's seminar is talking about the Ayurvedic habitat, talk about Ayurveda seasons, discuss the basic daily routine, look at the night routine, have a little bit of a discussion about meals and how we eat, and then really delve into how we tap into the existing networks to promote Ayurveda to design effective treatment programs for clients. One of the things about Ayurveda in the Western countries is that it's not as well known at the moment as some of the other modalities. So we have to work really hard to be able to promote not only what Ayurveda is, but also how it can be applied. And this can be a real challenge. So as a doctor or as an Ayurvedic practitioner or a yoga therapist that understands Ayurveda, you might have the most wonderful amount of knowledge. And you might be really skilled in being able to do diagnostics and to be able to understand the traditional texts. But the issue comes in the translation. So the idea of Ayurveda is life knowledge and empowering the people that we're working with. And in the Western countries, we're pretty used to the Western healthcare model where a doctor might have a quick consultation with us, write a script, and we don't question the doctor. That we know that the doctor is going to understand what it is they're doing and they're going to address some kind of symptoms that we're presenting with. I look at Ayurveda in a different way. I look at Ayurveda as internal medicine. We know that there are 8 different branches of Ayurveda, and the clinician is going to have all of this knowledge, and they're going to be able to use little bits and pieces of that to make a proper treatment program for the individual. The issue comes in when the individual's not understanding what's going on. So some of the medicines are foreign, and even the availability of medicines can be difficult. Ayurveda can be quite expensive. It's classed as a complementary therapy, which means that often it's a user pays model, very different to the Western healthcare model in Australia particularly. And that whole understanding of why are you giving this to me? What is this all about? That can sometimes be missing. So I really want to talk about how to tap into that, how to reach your clients from that client-centered model so that Ayurveda practices become part of the mainstream. And this is so much more empowering for not only the client, but also the practitioner as well. So one of the things I like to do is start at the very beginning. When I'm working with my clients or when I'm working with my students, we look at the very beginning. So what is Ayurveda all about? We are just one small piece of the whole. When one piece of the thread moves, the other piece of the web moves. We can look at that as a spider's web. We are all interconnected. So within us, we have all of the 5 great elements. So the 5 Panchamabhutas. There's air and space, fire, water, and earth. And we see that around us in our daily habitat, in the seasons that we're in our lifespan. And our idea is to understand that. This is the message that we're trying to get across, because this is that empowering model that's going to reach our clients and to be really able to make some ongoing life changes. So some common words here. I look at the micro and the macro. I teach that like increases like. When you do something, it is going to have a reaction. We know that it's going to have a reaction. So from this understanding, do you want it to have the same reaction or do you want it to have a different reaction? If you're feeling a little bit lethargic and you're choosing to stay in bed, the chances are that that lethargy, that tiredness, that dull feeling is going to increase. Yeah. So do you want to increase it, or maybe get out of bed, start to move things around a little bit, and then we go from this heaviness, this inertia that we might have woken up with, to this feeling of lightness, and things change a little bit. This is the idea of like increases like. I'll give you another example. If we're feeling quite spacey, or maybe a little bit lightheaded, a little bit of uncertainty might be coming in, it might be a little bit difficult to sleep. These things can often be contributed to lots of lightness that's around, maybe in the mind, maybe in the environment around us, might be a little bit windy. And so these qualities are going to increase. So the way that we work with the like increases like is to change it and put the opposite in. So if we are feeling a little bit anxious, or if we are feeling a little bit uncertain, or if it's a little bit hard to sleep, putting lots of routine and structure. Maybe having a glass of warm milk at night. And so you're using that heaviness of that milk, that sweetness of that milk to counteract that lightness that's going on all around you. And it really does start to change. So these are things that you can do yourself. We look at the idea of the gunas. So the gunas are written here. We might call them the gunas, the 10 opposing pairs. Sometimes I see it written as the 20 attributes. And all of these words we can attribute to the Panchamabhutas, the 5 great elements. And then we can attribute these words to the dosha. And whenever I speak to someone about Ayurveda and they know Ayurveda, they always know the dosha. And most common question I get is, what is my dosha? Can you tell me what my dosha is? And then there's that understanding of, okay, now I know what my dosha is. How do I eat for my dosha? How do I live for my dosha? And the thing about Ayurveda is that it's not static and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And our job as Ayurvedic practitioners or Ayurvedic doctors is to portray that knowledge to the people that we're working with. So instead of offering an online quiz or just a really quick dosha assessment, we're going to explain why we're doing the 3-fold examination, why we're looking at the 8-fold examination, why we're looking at the 10-fold examination, to get a really big picture. What is the individual's constitution? What is going on with that individual? What are all these symptoms alluding to? And what is underneath? What is the core root of the problem? And once we've understood this as Ayurvedic practitioners or consultants or doctors, then our job is to educate our clients. How are we going to do this? A really easy model, like increases like. You're encouraging people to think about it. Think about what you're doing and what you want your reaction to be. All right, let's go a little bit further in. So Ayurveda traditionally was born in Kerala, if you like. It's a very, very different environment to where I'm living within Australia. I have students that are in Northern Territory. I have students that are in Tasmania within Australia. I see lots of Ayurveda in America. I see lots of Ayurveda in Sweden, and all of these habitats are different. So the first thing that I ask my clients is to please describe your natural habitat. Where are you right now? What is going on for you right now? So my treatment program for someone in the grasslands is going to be very different from someone in the wetlands. Again, this is that understanding of going back to the 10 opposing pairs. What is it that's prominent in your environment in this particular time? And then, do I want to increase this or do I want to decrease this? This is something a client can understand. This is something that they can start to apply every day. So if you're looking at a habitat that is in the desert, We know, we can describe it. It's very dry, it's very hot, it might be very vast. And so we want to do the opposite. So we want to put some coolness in there. We want to put some oil in here. We want to be able to change all of those hot penetrating features to be able to cool the body and make it a little bit more oily. This is that application of like increases like. And then we're going to go through the seasons. So again, often there's a misconception that once you've had an Ayurvedic consultation, that's what it is. This is what your dosha is. This is what your prakriti is. This is what your vikriti is. This is what your natural constitution is. This is what your current state of imbalance is. This is your program. And this is your program for life. But that's incorrect. One of the things that clients have to understand is that it needs to change. It needs to evolve. We call our business Aligning Health. We have a retreat center. We've got a Yoga and Ayurvedic retreat center. And like I said before, we run classes in Yoga and Ayurveda. We call ourselves Aligning Health specifically because we are always aligning. We're not aligned. We are living in society that changes. We're living in a world that changes. And we have to change with that. The day-to-day will change. The seasons will change. Our time of life will change. And one of the things that we're not taught a lot in the West is that when the seasons change, our daily routine needs to change. And our habits of diet also needs to change. So we look here about some of the ways to counteract, again, that heat and that intensity of summer. Now, we can't just take this in isolation. If we just take this and say, in summer, this is what we do, then again, we're doing that we're doing that one-size-fits-all approach for Ayurveda. And that's not how it works. Summer, where I live in Bendigo, in Victoria, is very dry. It's very hot. So we're on a 20-acre property, and in summer, within a couple of days of it being 40 degrees, the paddocks are dry. They are just crisp. And I notice in my skin, we notice in the way that the sun is a little bit longer. We have daylight savings in Victoria as well. So all of our circadian rhythms and our sleep cycles are out of balance. We need to change the way we've been living before that to counteract that balance and bring us a little bit further back into balance. If I was looking, for example, at summer in Kerala, it is going to be a completely different experience. If I'm looking at summer, for example, in Darwin, again, it's going to be very different. We don't have a lot of moisture in summer. We have very, very dry summers. In Queensland, for example, in Australia, it's more moist. It's going to be more humid. So all of our lifestyles are going to be different according to what's going on in the environment. This is that individualized approach of Ayurveda, not the one size fits all. And when you look at the traditional texts say the idea of Ayurveda is to take the philosophies, so bring in the Charaka Samhita, bring in the Ashtanga Haridram, and then have that knowledge to be able to understand the context of Ayurveda and understand the context of where you live and what's going on in your particular life. And this is the power of making Ayurveda completely empowering and client-centered. So we see just some general advice in Ayurveda. In Australia, we don't have the two solstices, so we're not dividing our seasons into 6 areas. In Melbourne, we have 4 distinct seasons: summer, autumn, winter, spring. And this is what we have. And we know that there needs to be a transition between summer and autumn and between winter and spring. But first we need to understand and educate the clients what is actually going on in summer. So we have this idea in summer that our digestive fire is a little bit higher. The sun's up, our digestive fire is higher. Yeah. We can go out and we can eat a bigger meal at night because we have more daylight. We've got daylight savings. Often you might see people with glasses of alcohol, maybe some cool white wine in the evening. The only difference is that we're not taught that our digestive fire is actually lower. So our Agni, if we use our Ayurvedic terms, is actually lower. And our reason for this is because all of that heat that's gone to our fingers and our toes and our outer extremities, our body is working really hard to be able to cool that area. And so it means that there's not as much available for the internal organs. So our digestion is going to actually be lower. One of the other things that we need to learn is about food. And I have a picture here of watermelon. Watermelon is very cooling. If we look at the qualities of watermelon, we can say it's also very wet. It's very sweet. We need to understand how to pair these fruits or these foods together. So a really common salad in summer within Australia would be watermelon and some mint and some feta cheese and maybe some balsamic vinegar over the top. I see this a lot. With my Ayurvedic understanding, however, I'm looking at my state of digestion that's already reduced, and I'm looking at the qualities of the feta cheese and that combination together, and I know that I'm not going to be able to digest that properly, and neither are my clients, because we have food combinations that are opposing to each other. This is the skill that needs to come from the practitioner. You need to be able to explain the why and give the guidance. So often I see food lists. This is what you eat most of. This is what you eat least of. These are the legumes. These are the fruits. However, it can be overwhelming and confusing. So we just start with the idea, like increases like. Think about what's going on. Think about what the food is in your body. And do you want that to continue or do you want that to decrease? Very client-centered practice. So going from autumn, we then come to winter. And it's completely the opposite. So we're going into a cooling area now. So our qualities are changing again. Yeah. So the body is starting to change. We've got those warm rays of the sun, and now we're starting to get that coolness of winter. And this can cause a build-up of pitta in the body. So again, we want to work on digestion. So again, our appetite can be compromised. So we might do some therapeutic measures, and it is recommended around this time that a panchakarma might be a good idea. But if we're working from the contextualization of the Western society, to be able to do a complete panchakarma is going to be very, very difficult for the way that the lifestyle is structured. So we can do just some basic routines and basic structure to be able to support that digestion and to be able to support that transition. And this is going to be based on in the individual, depending on what's going on for that individual. But being mindful and aware that what we did in summer now has to transition to autumn, and it's going to transition to winter. So in winter, we have a very English influence. So those sticky puddings, some heavy casseroles, so a meat in a rich gravy or a very rich curry. Here, our digestive capacity is actually increasing. And it's increasing because all that warmth and all that energy is now moving to the digestive system. So our digestive fire is a little bit higher. So this is the best season for good health. However, it's also the season when we see a lot of people with coughs and colds and flus. So we still want to bring warmth into the diet. We might use some kitchen pharmacy here. So things like our kitchen spices, some ginger, some cumin, maybe some black mustard seeds. Fenugreek can counteract some of that moisture that's going on. Our tools here for our client is to teach them that basic kitchen pharmacy. And I know that when I was brought up, I'm from Australia in Melbourne, and I was brought up on meat and 3 veg. That's what my mum knew. That's what her mum knew. So every meal, the evening meal was the largest, and we had some potatoes and we had some meat of whatever it was. And then we had a green vegetable and a yellow vegetable, always followed by dessert, whether it be ice cream or custard or tinned fruit. We know that that's not going to be really good for our proper digestion and proper health now if we look at the idea of Ayurveda. So even though we can digest foods, we still want to digest foods that are good for our body and are going to be beneficial for our body. And this again comes from that once individual practice, not that one size fits all practice. And then I'm in paddocks. I'm surrounded on 20 acres here. And in summer, the grass is very brittle. In winter, it is beautiful and it is green and it is lush. And right now in Australia, it's winter. And the grass is beautifully green. The kangaroos are out in abundance and the dams around me are full. And in winter, we do naturally put on a little bit of weight. So we want to keep our body warmth, keep warmth in our body. However, in spring, this is going to start to liquefy. And because I'm on so many grasslands here, and it is a lot of open space and farming land, a lot of people suffer from hay fever. So we have this melting, and we might say that the kapha is starting to melt. So this earth and water type quality is starting to melt. And if we're prone to allergies and we're still eating the same way and not adjusting our lifestyle, this can start to cause a bit of a tickle. And that tickle can start to cause a little bit of infection in the body. And it can be really uncomfortable. If you suffer hay fever, I've had some clients with quite severe hay fever, it is really uncomfortable. We have this dripping, it's falling from you. So we need to change and we need to adjust again. So our exercise here might be a little bit more vigorous, and we might be using some lukewarm water, maybe even putting some fresh ginger in that lukewarm water, and changing our diet. Again, our digestion is going to change. So how do we do all this? From an Ayurvedic perspective, how do we understand all of this? This can be quite heavy, and the practitioner might have all of this knowledge, wonderful knowledge. They've studied for a long time, but for someone from the West hearing it for the first time, it might be a little bit overwhelming and a little bit confusing. So we use words. Think about your use of your Sanskrit. Is it really necessary to get the point across? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just not needed. You might be able to talk about the 10 opposing pairs and be able to explain that to your client more than them understanding the Sanskrit. Ask them to connect. So again, we might bring a little bit of yoga in here. If we look at the idea of pratyahara, looking at the senses, just being aware of the senses. Which sense is working when? What's actually going on, and what can you contribute that to? And then teaching. You actually need all of these 5 elements within the body. So in the West, the way that our social media portrays a beautiful person might be a little bit of a misleading understanding, and it can throw mental health out the window. It can throw some lifestyle out the window. So explaining to the clients, we need all of these, and these are put in balance for our individual constitution from our birth. And our idea, our intention of Ayurveda is to keep that balance as much as we possibly can. Because we know that that balance goes out through lifestyle. We know that stress is one of the leading causes of disease. And in our Western world, we have too much earth and water and fire. And now we're seeing the air and the space come in too. We have a diet that is predominantly sweet, sour, and salty. And we're missing bitter, pungent, and astringent. We have a lifestyle that is highly stressful, highly multitasking. And this can cause too much buildup. It has to go somewhere. So we're seeing now a high incidence of things like diabetes, heart disease, stress-related diseases, mental health diseases. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, we know that a lot of that is from internal medicine. So if we start to train people to look at what's going on, if we put in proper lifestyle, we put in proper diet, these 2 things together can start to counteract a lot of these lifestyle diseases that we're seeing, particularly if you work on the breath. If we work on prana and we look at diet, elimination, the breathing, and just our basic lifestyle, things are going to change. And our sleep is most definitely going to change. So in Ayurveda, the Charaka Samhita says that everything has therapeutic properties, but it's the way that is used that makes it either positive or negative. Again, a really empowering statement. We need to understand what we're doing. Again, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, you might have the best kashayam that you know, the best decoction medicine that you know is going to suit this client. And you might give the recommendations, and you've got that pharmaceutical preparation. There you go, beautiful. It's all natural preparation, it's herbal medicine. However, if the client's not understanding it, they're not going to be faithful to that. They're not going to understand that. And we know when we're looking at Ayurveda that someone with the earth and the water element are going to be more faithful. They might be a little bit slower on the uptake, but they will be more faithful. Someone with that pitta, that fire element, really want to understand what is going on. Why are you giving this to me? I don't know what it's about. It's a different kind of medicine that I'm used to. You need to be able to sell this to me, to convince me, because I have that kind of mind that's an inquiry-based mind, and I'm not quite sure. I want to know. Whereas an air and space, someone predominantly with those Vata type qualities, they might start, it doesn't taste nice, it's not good, the vehicle for administration is not agreeing with them, I'm not going to continue with this. You need to really work from a psychological perspective, from a counseling perspective, from an every perspective. Work with the individual so that we have those therapeutic properties that are positive, not so negative. So if we're looking at something like a sweet taste, for example, sweet is very soothing. And we're often missing this. But the sweet taste that we're picking up a lot in our society is not conducive for health. Often it's been modified. So we've got those white sugars, white flours, things that are processed. This is going to have a negative effect. If we're looking at things that are more of those natural sources of sweet, like pumpkin, basmati rice, ghee, milk, for example, it's used in the positive effect in a therapeutic property. So we're educating, again, our clients, what is actually going on here? And I said before, sleep. So many people in our Western society are not getting the right amount of sleep. And the jury's out in the Western world. How much sleep is enough sleep? And when we know Ayurveda, we know that Vata needs more sleep, Pitta moderate amount, Kapha not so much. However, we see it as a flip. And often those Kapha types are getting more sleep, and the Vata types just don't have that ability to get to sleep or stay in sleep. Or they're waking up in that Vata time and unable to get back to sleep. So if the body is not getting that proper amount of sleep, and the breathing is not proper, and the diet and elimination is not working, we're not giving our clients the best opportunity for health. We need to be able to get them to see this, get them to understand this. So when we're looking at what is sleep, this is again from the Charaka Samhita. When the mind, including the sensory and motor organs, are exhausted and they disassociate themselves from their object, then the individual sleeps. We know we have a highly stressful society. It is multitasking. Sleep in our society, how do we see sleep in our society? Sporadic, either too much or too little. And often there's an amount of fear that's associated with sleep. Fatigue, insomnia, unrest, shift work. This is all going to throw it out of balance. And some of the side effects of lack of sleep is, again, more stressed, increased anxiety, and that inability to function properly as a member of society. Overwork, fear, stress, older age. Again, understanding that person in their context. What age are they in? Are they in the Kapha age, in the younger age, in the Pitta age, in the middle age? Are they in the Vata stage of life, getting towards older age? Disease is something going on in the body. Or Vata, it can be very hard when the mind is just so up here to be able to rest at night and to be able to soothe that. So we have recommendations, general recommendations to support sleep. And some of these might look fairly common and might look fairly easy. However, to ask someone who's already not getting sleep, it's not going to work. It's just something else that I have to add on. I'm a mother. I run a business as well. I know how hard it can be to ask clients to put one extra thing into their day, let alone 9 extra things. So one of the things that I highly recommend is to work very slowly and maybe look at it more from a life coaching perspective. If you have that luxury of working with clients, From a lifestyle perspective, you might recommend just 2 or 3 things that you know that the client has the ability to do. And then you're going to tailor everything for that client. So your massage might be with a specific massage oil, a thalam, for example, or your pleasant smells might be with a specific aromatherapy. So you're tailoring that for what's going on with the individual. It makes it so much more empowering. And we know these are daily lifestyles. On waking, this is what we do. But a tongue scraper, what is a tongue scraper? Checking, do they actually know the basics of what it is? I often get my clients say, yeah, I scrape my tongue. I use the back of the toothbrush. The back of the toothbrush on lots of the toothbrushes in Australia have little bumps on it, and it's called a tongue cleaner. That is not a tongue scraper. So visually showing them a tongue scraper and taking that time out just to work out, do you actually know what I'm talking about as a tongue scraper? And also, do you know how to use this? So not only are you talking about the why, this is what you do, but you're just checking in because you've got all this knowledge. Your knowledge is powerful, but the idea is to portray it to the client. And all of this, the oil swilling, the eyes, the nasya, the nose, it's so powerful. Showering. However, what can you fit into your day? What is the most important thing that you think is going to be beneficial for that client? If there's digestive issues, you might just look at tongue scraping. Just for the next week, scrape your tongue. Maybe 3 times, if you can do it 3 times. And then you know, like the Charaka Samhita says, when you're trying to take a habit out, replace it with something else and work slowly. So once that's a solid practice, then you can talk about cleaning the teeth. Then you can talk about doing oil swilling, gandush, etc. If, however, the client is transitioning between winter to spring and they're suffering a lot from hay fever, you might see that nasya with a therapeutic oil is one of the best things that they can possibly do. So maybe just for a time being, the tongue scraper is left aside and the nasya is one of the things that you're going to recommend in your daily program. Showering. I'm from Bendigo. The winters are cold. So I know it's very different from Kerala and it's very different from Queensland and Darwin around me. And we like the hot showers. Educating your client. What are some of the side effects of having a hot shower? This we're not taught. So this might be basic knowledge, but within Australia, in the Western context, this is something we actually have to cover. We have to educate our clients of what's actually going on with the showers. So we know this is the beautiful effects of having a shower. It's purifying, it's life-giving, it removes dirt. However, if it is too hot, it can have consequences. So we want showers that have medium temperature. And what actually is self-massage? And when are you going to do it? Again, it's just another one of those practices in an already busy schedule. So it's selling it. It's putting it into that Western context. Time out, that experience of pratyahara, touching the skin, using a specific oil if you want to, but just taking that time out, that time to reconnect, particularly if sleep's an issue there, using a warm oil. And once people start and they're experiencing it, then it's easier to keep it going. So rather than a prescription of medicine and a whole list of to-dos, take the time to introduce it slowly. Think about how you're actually using your practice. And I've been teaching yoga now for over 10 years. And we know that we want people to do yoga. It makes you feel good. It is that spiritual practice, that attainment of spiritual practice. However, I would prefer as a yoga teacher to see my clients do 5 minutes every morning and put that into a routine than come to a class for an hour a week. Try and get that as part of your self-routine. So we have, again, the prana. We know that pranavata is our very first sub-dosha. If we can work on the breath, the breathing, the pranayam in our yoga, get our body moving and have that mindful, that pratyahara experience as well, it's going to take yoga off the mat. So much more conducive than an hour practice once a week. And meals. I could spend another 3 hours just talking about nutrition, Ayurveda in the Western context. Education. learning what foods go with what, actually learning how to cook with spices. I said I grew up with meat and 3 veg, a piece of potato, a green veg, and a yellow veg with dessert afterwards. How do you actually cook with spices? This is a real skill. And often people would say to me, I'm not interested in Ayurveda because I don't want to eat Indian food. So it's going, actually, let's look at what's going on for your body and let's look at just increasing prana in the body. So for me, that might mean eating seasonally, eating fresh, trying to reduce the amount of processed food that's coming into the diet, trying to reduce the amount of genetically modified food, changing food with the seasons, and keeping your meals at regular times so that your body knows when it's going to eat. How to eat. Eat with that mindful awareness. I get a lot of clients that will say, I have comfort eating. I eat emotionally. What does that look like? And again, just starting slowly, maybe putting a little bit more breakfast, making a little bit heavier, a little bit sweeter, and then watching the change as we go into the evening when the digestion goes down again. Working with your client, working on where are they at, what's going to work for them. Nighttime routines. The flicking of the phone, it's addictive. Putting it aside. And again, we can say this, but what is the client going to be able to do? How are they going to be able to do that? This is that contextualization. And we're not taught to go to bed at a certain time. Teach your client to work with that natural rhythm. So in the kapha time, this is the time to go to bed. If you stay up after 10 p.m., you've gone into pitta time and it's really hard to sleep. Education, use the why. You know the why. Portray the why to your client and contextualize it not only for their habitat, for the seasons, for their stage of life, but contextualize it for them in their life. So in summary, we've had a look at the Ayurvedic habitat. We've looked at different seasons. We've looked at a basic daily routine. We've looked at a basic night routine, a little bit of meals, and hopefully I've shared with you, tap into the existing network, tap into that individual, because for them, they already know. And when you can start to educate them, then you are both working together to empower your client. So in the West, we might not have the doctor and the medicine and the nurse and the patient, but we do have the doctor and we do have the patient, and anything else is a bonus. Tap into that community, tap into those resources, and let's share and promote Ayurveda. It is one beautifully powerful system of healing. So thank you for listening today. My name's Sarah. I'm very, very passionate about Ayurveda. I'm very passionate about yoga, and together I believe that they are a very powerful method of healing. Thank you very much.